Hey, good morning, students. It's Saturday, and I'm at my home office and really just sitting waiting for some football games to start. But anyway, I just was looking over this morning some of your forum posts, and I'm enjoying reading them. And you guys are doing a good job. I want to encourage you on that. But I also want to just make a couple comments and about on the first forum when it comes to the historical and cultural context. The importance of placing Scripture in its historical and cultural context cannot be overemphasized. It is extremely important, and you can't really apply Scripture to present day situations without first putting it into its historical context. Now, like anything, that can be overdone, and sometimes a lesson or a sermon is so full of historical and cultural facts that people get lost and don't pay attention when the application is made. But however, as the minister or the teacher, putting it in its historical context and its cultural context first is extremely important. And the really neat thing about being a lifelong learner of the Bible is as you do this, it really gets easier. Because the New Testament, for example, really covers a short period of time when all is said and done. And so once you get a handle on the culture of that day and the historical context of that day, then as you read Scripture, it becomes easier to do it. But right now, it all may be brand new material, but it's still fascinating, and it's where you really learn a whole lot. For example, when it comes to Jesus, you cannot understand anything Jesus says without having an understanding of his Jewish context and that he was a rabbi. And so you need to understand the Old Testament then to understand the New Testament, but not to forget that he was a Jew, and so we have to understand that. And so the importance of the synagogue, the importance of the temple, in today's reading, or the reading that was for this forum in John chapter 5, the importance of the religious leaders, even though they criticized Jesus, still understanding what those religious leaders were about and why they did what they did, and the role that they had in the community is extremely important. The feast that Jesus was going to, the sheep gate, all those things are important. The pool that the lame was sitting by would have been like the hot tubs in Hot Springs, Arkansas, or I'm sure there's some out west as well, where people would sit in them just to their aches and pains, and then with the belief that they could be healed. But then also the fact that this lame person was on the margins of society because the sick and the lame were not necessarily well taken care of, and he even states that he did not have anyone who would even get him to the water. That's an important aspect of the story also, and why did they not care for the margins of the people in the margins like maybe they should have? What was going on in that day? And of course, again, when you get to the Old Testament, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to put things in its context because you're covering a lot broader period of time. But it's still important to do that, even though it's a hard work. It's extremely important, but I think you'll find it fascinating the more that you do. One thing I do want to point out, and these are some things that I've been working on in my own life, and it may not be in your reading, but when you read Scripture, to not just put it in its historical and cultural context, but also to try to understand the Bible from the bottom up instead of the top down. And what I mean by that is Scripture, most of Scripture was written by people who were oppressed and who were on the margins of society or who were enslaved, and it was written to people who were oppressed and who were going through those difficulties in life. In the West, we have a hard time, or we have a tendency to want to read Scripture from the top down. In other words, we put ourselves in the positions of power. We see ourselves there because that's just kind of how we've been taught, and we don't understand what it means to be on the margins or to be oppressed. But yet, that opens up a whole new realm of what the Bible means when you can look at it from the bottom up. And so put yourself in the position of the person who is sick at the pool. And what does it mean to be ostracized from the community? What does it mean to be so put off by other people and so marginalized that your own family is not even helping you anymore? And then what did it mean for Jesus to come and reach out to that person who's on the bottom of society and do what he did? And so those are just some things that I'm working through myself, of trying to not just its historical and cultural context, but also reading Scripture from the bottom up instead of the top down. Keep up the good work and enjoy your weekend, and I will talk to you later.